our people as compared to resources, Mr. Speaker. And one thing that this particular Senate brings, that sometimes we are not visible to rural communities, is the fact that the diversity that stitches this nation together, Mr. Speaker, does not manifest in the grassroots as it manifests here, Mr. Speaker. I remember very well when we went to Turkana, Mr. Speaker, as a Senate, the challenges that both the staffers of Senate as well as the members of this House experienced by just trying to navigate going to Turkana, Mr. Speaker. I remember some of the staffers of Parliament that were really, really committed, took, vehicles from here all the way to Eldoret, going all the way to Kainuk. And when conversations were being talked about the issue that was challenging in the North Rift with serious banditry and serious insecurity issues, sometimes most moved from this issue, they could not be able to connect with them. But when you came back and you were told about the ordeal that people experienced and the hardship that people are facing in those areas, Mr. Speaker, it makes the matters that this House can be able to address very close to the people who can be able to address them in terms of lawmakers, Mr. Speaker. During that time in Turkana, Mr. Speaker, I also remember very well that it was not just about sitting and being able to pass laws or conduct the ordinary and routine work of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, but we had very rigorous plans that could be able to expose the community of Turkana and the larger county of Turkana to the eyes, minds, and even the hearts of the senators who managed to go to Turkana, Mr. Speaker. And we were able to see firsthand the challenges that communities in Turkana are facing, Mr. Speaker. I personally had the privilege of going to Cathedral Education Scheme, Mr. Speaker, and I learned a lot about the challenges that the people of Turkana are facing, even at a time that the government had tried to avail things like cheap fertilizer, cheap seeds for people to be able to grow crops and be able to have a livelihood. Yet you could realize that because of poor infrastructure in those areas, Mr. Speaker, because of poor institutions that can be able to enable them receive these commodities in time, to be able to plant on time, Mr. Speaker, we saw how difficult it was just for them to be able to get it, such that some places still went without even crop growing, Mr. Speaker. When we went to the Cathedral Irrigation Scheme, Mr. Speaker, we also saw that because of ongoing conflict between communities there, Mr. Speaker, sometimes it was very hard for young people to be able to go to their chambers and be able to even cultivate and make a living out of this, Mr. Speaker. And when we came back here, these are some of the things that informed our thought of agency when we talk about issues that are affecting Turkana, Mr. Speaker. I remember very well, we also got to visit the oil fields in Turkana, Mr. Speaker, and you could be able to see the challenges that people are facing there, Mr. Speaker. And what I'm trying to say here is very simple, that sometimes the needs that are manifesting on the grassroots, Mr. Speaker, are so removed from us, yet we are drawn with a very wonderful diversity of individuals that sometimes the story that they're telling us here, when you meet the senator from Mandera, Senator Ali Roba, and he tells you about the story of women who still go miles to fetch water and the amazing work that people in Mandera are trying to do to be able to grow trees and to be able to, build water catchment areas so that they can have a greener land and a less drier land, Mr. Speaker. It becomes sometimes just stories because that is the diversity that pulls us together. But then when you go to the ground and see both the struggle and you also see the human spirit away from the struggle and you see them trying to actually implement something, it brings the point home for the policies and laws that we are passing in this House, Mr. Speaker. As we are thinking about going to Busia, Mr. Speaker, for this year, I know for sure that Busia is one of the counties, Mr. Speaker, that was affected very seriously with floods in this country, Mr. Speaker. And sometimes when we see those headlines in TV, we see those headlines in different, newspapers, it just becomes headline like that because you read about it, you see news, and then the image is gone. But then the people in Busia are facing these challenges every single day of their life, Mr. Speaker. I had a chance as the disaster response committee of my party, ODM, I am the chair there, Mr. Speaker, and I had a chance to go with our committee, who I thank very much, Mr. Speaker, to go to Busia in 2 occasions. One, we went to a place called Malaba Central, Mr. Speaker, to be able to look at the impact of floods in Busia, Mr. Speaker. And then afterwards, we went to Budalangi, Mr. Speaker. These are Kenyans that you'll find that they have even lost homes. They have lost livelihoods. They cannot be able to go to school, sometimes blocked in this menace of flood, Mr. Speaker. And the interventions that are supposed to be done through policy, through government actions, Mr. Speaker, sometimes lack in these spaces because the only people who can be able to talk very strongly for them then become only their representatives. But that is not enough, Mr. Speaker. It goes without saying that when you go and visit Busia, and you have got a chance to visit some of these challenges that these communities face, Mr. Speaker, then you can be able to connect at a personal level so that even when you come to pass policy in this house, or even when you come to champion for oversight role in the cabinet of this country, Mr. Speaker, then you speak to issues and problems that you have been able to see people facing clearly and people facing in a way that becomes prohibitive to their modes of survival in those communities, Mr. Speaker. When I went in Busia, Mr. Speaker, I saw a line of trucks that were ranging for almost 15 kilometers, Mr. Speaker. When you leave Bungoma and heading to Malaba border, Mr. Speaker, you'll find a queue of trucks in that area, Mr. Speaker, that you then wonder the time that they take to be even get cleared there, the danger that imposes in the drivers who are there as well as the community that is there, Mr. Speaker. You start thinking about what would be more adventurous policies that we as a nation can be able to think about simple issues of clearance and forwarding within our borders, Mr. Speaker. There are so many issues that I am excited that this particular Senate is going to learn from Busia when we go and be able to hold our sittings there and extend that sittings to visiting some of the crucial challenges, and not only challenges, also opportunities that people in Busia are facing. And this, Mr. Speaker, becomes the pretext of perhaps thinking about the next county that we'll go to, Mr. Speaker. I still pray, I'm not advocating, but I still pray that hopefully during my time here, Mr. Speaker, we will get a chance to perhaps do this particular Senate Mashinani, Mr. Speaker, in the subsequent years in Migori County, Mr. Speaker. It is a county of immense potential and amazing potential, Mr. Speaker. Also one of the counties within Nyanza region that is extremely cosmopolitan, Mr. Speaker. We have got the amazing culture of the people of Kuria, who are, industrious in their own way in the traditional agricultural space, Mr. Speaker. They work very hard, to be able to take care of their animals that inform the prime meat that the people of this country eat. Yet they have got challenges in Kuria that you cannot even imagine the slaughter, facilities to be able to, sell this prime meat to the country, Mr. Speaker, to the extent that the people of Kuria face a lot of challenges when they want to sell some of their best products to this country, such that people sometimes just take live animals to Nairobi through trucks that come to Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, which, if there was an improvement for them to be able to get some slaughter facilities in Kuria, they can be able to excel, Mr. Speaker. You know very well that right now there's this advocacy around the issue of healthy eating, Mr. Speaker. Instead of just eating, what we call French fries, you can also eat Kuria fries, because in Kuria is where you find that they are the sweetest potatoes in Migori County, Mr. Speaker. But yet, even as they try to grow this potato, Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of limitations with what they can be able to do because there is no proper investment in their value chain. Migori County has figured out one of the facilities for improving potato in that area, but the capacity of it hasn't been tapped well to be able to help the people of Kuria, Mr. Speaker. And even within that mode of survival, Mr. Speaker, you still find that the people of Kuria and the people of Narok attend conflict, economic conflict, because of border issues, because of a bit of caste harassing that has been endemic in those areas, almost similar and akin to what we have seen in places like Turkana and the North Rift, Mr. Speaker. And when you come to Migori County, Mr. Speaker, One day you will see even the beauty, the Somali community that is doing a wonderful business, wonderful business intervention in Migori town as well as the border areas. We have got the Kikuyu communities in Migori, Mr. Speaker. We have got the Nubian community in Migori County. If you go all the way up to Miuru Bay, where we have got the Lua Basubas in that area, Mr. Speaker, coming all the way from Suna West and going to Nyatike constituency, where the people of Karungu are doing very well in terms of fishing industry, Mr. Speaker, but within their limitations, Mr. Speaker, you will see immense potential in these counties, Mr. Speaker. When you come all the way and come to a place called Uriri, together with Awendo, all the way to a place called Rongo constituency, Mr. Speaker, you will be wowed by the strength of sugarcane industry in that area, Mr. Speaker, and sometimes in all the tables in this country, Mr. Speaker, you will find that there is some sugar that you always see called Sony sugar that comes from that region, Mr. Speaker. But we also have places like, Transmara, all the way if you go to our border with Homa Bay, you will find things like the Sukari industry, Mr. Speaker, wonderful industries, Mr. Speaker. All these just showing how much potential are within our counties, Mr. Speaker, yet the investment hasn't been done in a proper way that can be able to lift them, Mr. Speaker. And this is the house that when we talk about adding counties money, when we talk about intervening for counties and fighting for counties to get more resources to continue going to devolved system, Mr. Speaker, people in this house will connect with them. The honorable members will connect with these needs as much as possible when they get to interact with these particular opportunities and particular challenges in this community as much as possible, Mr. Speaker. And I think that this house should be lauded by the people of Kenya for standing firm for the idea that the elected community must always be closest to the people. They must be close to the people not only by their words and rhetorics, Mr. Speaker, but also by experiencing what the people in the villages and in the communities are facing, Mr. Speaker. That's why I'm very proud today, Mr. Speaker, that the Senate of Kenya, when it was time that local communities have come in their frustrations of hard economic times, and especially epitomized by the younger generation called the Gen Z, who have faced a lot of economic challenges and have faced a lot of hardship, both that's affecting them and affecting their families, Mr. Speaker. When that time came that the leadership of this country could not be able to stand with them strong, and sometimes even more importantly, the leadership of Parliament got a little bit cagey and edgy, and were hiked to the extent backed away from the people, Mr. Speaker, the Senate stood tall. The Senate stood tall and gave the country direction, and the Senate stood tall and was able to at least initiate a conversation in the country, Mr. Speaker. And I'm seeing that leaders are already having that kind of tempo, even though the pulse of the nation is still a hungered nation and a hungry nation, where young people still they still want to punch harder so that their voices can be heard, where young people still feel that they need to punch harder so that change can happen in this country, where young people still feel like they need to do some more to see some equal reaction from government in terms of proper and sober actions that can be able to make their lives better, Mr. Speaker. At least people are talking. At least people are converging. At least people are starting to listen to one another. At least the powers that be are starting to listen to one another. And this is not happening just by chance, Mr. Speaker. It is happening because this house called Senate has been able to stand firm, has been able to bring about very hard conversations, conversations that are touching on ourselves, conversations that are touching on the mightiest powers of this country, Mr. Speaker, that for once, people can start listening to the downtrodden in this country, Mr. Speaker. And we are extending this through this kind of Senate machinani, where senators are not only going to be in their comfort in this wonderful seats in this house as they talk about issues that are affecting Kenyans, but they're going to the grassroots, not only to talk about those issues, not only to pass laws, but to see in almost anthropological way the way our people live their lives, the way these issues are affecting them, and also the way their aspirations can be able to inform the aspirations of this house in every single laws that we pass, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I'm very proud, Mr. Speaker, of these particular motions that have been pushed forward. I'm also very proud that it has become now a tradition of the Senate. Leave alone for the fact that we have got limited resources, Mr. Speaker. I am sure if the Senate had got adequate resources, Mr. Speaker, it goes without saying that we could not only be doing one county in a year. Because if you're doing one county in a year, Mr. Speaker, it means that during our time in this House, we can only be able to do 5 counties, Mr. Speaker. But when I look at the hearts of these wonderful senators who are so committed to Kenyans in this House, Mr. Speaker, who sometimes sit until very late, people like Senator Faki of Mombasa, Senator of Vihiga, Senator Osotsi, Senator of Kericho, Senator Arun Cheriot, Senator of Elgeyo Marakwet, all the senators who are here are so dedicated to the issue of supporting our counties, Mr. Speaker. You can see through that dedication that their desire is that if we add enough resources, we could be able to even do at least 4 of the counties of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, at least in a year. So that with that, we can be able to have a holistic conversation within a particular Senate session, such as this being the 4th session, Mr. Speaker. If you can imagine if we had visited four counties in every year, Mr. Speaker, we would have a more representative conversation of what our people are facing, Mr. Speaker. And I want to urge the senators that even as we look forward to go to Busia, let them also be able to actually inform our strategy in dealing with the issues of budget, the issues of, Kara, the issues of Dora when we come here. Let it not just be that when we come, then we forget some of these overarching challenges. Some of them might not be within our powers and within our borders as a Senate, but at least this platform can be able to help us highlight some of them to key policymakers, Mr. Speaker, that some of those challenges can find their ways, either through wisdom or just through of this esteemed parliament. They can find their ways in relevant ministerial, departmental, and government agencies, Mr. Speaker, that can be able to deal with them. One of those, Mr. Speaker, for example, in Nyatike, where I come from, Mr. Speaker, I have experienced over 6 years, Mr. Speaker, of wonderful people of Nyatike who are trying to grow rice, Mr. Speaker. Some of the best rice grains that you can think about in this country are in the lower Kuja irrigation scheme, Mr. Speaker. But the people in Nyatike, when they gave their land so that that scheme could get a footing and start as a serious project that could be able to increase production of rice and be able to increase, the contribution of our region in the food basket of the country, Mr. Speaker. Some of the community members lost their land in a scheme that the government was supposed to pay them, but they were never paid.